For this session, we're going to finish the discussion of IAS 23, which will be your borrowing cost. Okay, so the standard that we are going to focus on will be IAS 23, and we're going to relate this later on to our assets, or particularly to our property, plant, and equipment that will qualify as, or that will qualify for the capitalization of your borrowing cost. Okay, so let's go to the objectives of the standard first. So the objective of IAS 23 is to prescribe the accounting treatment for borrowing cost, or basically the interest. Borrowing cost will include interest on bank overdrafts and other borrowings, other finance charges relating to finance leases, and exchange differences on foreign currency borrowings where they are regarded as an adjustment to our interest. Okay, so generally it pertains to all types of interest that are relating to borrowings that are incurred by the company. Okay, so we go first to the key definitions of our standard. Okay, key definitions first will be borrowing cost. Okay, so borrowing cost are items of interest that may include, or that will include, the items provided here. First will be interest expense calculated by the effective interest method under IAS 39. This is actually an old standard, but basically this pertains to your effective interest method. Okay, the same that we are learning in financial assets, okay, or financial instruments. So basically, it pertains to the effective interest associated with a borrowing. Second will be finance charges in respect to finance leases recognized in accordance with IAS 17, which is now covered by IFRS 12. Okay, so this is now your leases. And then exchange differences arising from foreign currency borrowings, okay, to the extent that they are relating to interest cost. Okay, so those interest or those foreign currency exchange differences can be treated as part of your borrowing cost later on. If you are borrowing funds in a foreign currency and you are translating it to your or you are using the exchange rates, okay, during the periods, and there are certain differences. Okay, so please take note that the standard does not deal with the actual or imputed cost of equity, because equity or cost of equity is not considered as a borrowing cost. Okay, because we are only talking about borrowings to our creditors, or those that are treated as liability components of our financial statement. So it will also not include any preferred capital, okay, because these are not classified as liability. Okay, so next, a qualifying asset, okay, is also one of our key terms or key definitions. Qualifying asset. So a qualifying asset is an asset that takes a substantial period of time to get ready for its intended use or sale. Okay, meaning it will be it will take more than 1 year, or at a minimum 1 year before you can use the asset. Okay, it can be items of property, plant, and equipment. It can be investment property. It could be intangible assets, okay, or other made-to-order inventory. So these are the job order items, okay, in our inventories that will take a substantial period of time. Okay, so generally, as provided by the standard, these items can qualify as qualifying assets for capitalization of borrowing cost. Okay, so these are the main items that we can, or wherein we can capitalize the borrowing cost. Now, the concern here is this item under the scope of IAS 23, because there are certain qualifying assets, okay, that will not, or that are not qualified for purposes of capitalizing the borrowing cost. So meaning, qualifying assets sila based on definition, pero hindi sila pasok doon sa qualifying asset na accepted, or na pwedeng mag-capitalize ng borrowing cost. Okay, so yun yung concept niya. So first will be yung qualifying assets measured at fair value such as biological assets accounted for under IAS 41. So, ang concept kasi niyan, okay, 'di ba sa yung ating biological asset, they are simply measured at fair value less cost to sell. Okay? So, kung fair value ang basis niya, hindi mo pwedeng i-capitalize ang borrowing cost kasi hindi naman siya pwedeng maging component ng fair value. That is why hindi siya sakop ng IAS 23. Kasi nga in the first place hindi naman talaga siya pwedeng makapitalize or hindi talaga pwedeng makapitalize yung borrowing cost in this situation. Second, inventories that are manufactured or otherwise produced in large quantities on a repetitive basis and that take a substantial period to get ready for sale. Okay? Example niyan yung mga maturing whiskey, okay, yung mga dumadaan sa fermentation process, okay? Or yung tawag dito, yung similar process para makapag-produce ka ng additional product. Okay? So, ang concept niyan ganito, yung maturing whiskey or other similar items, okay, qualifying asset siya. Kasi it will take substantial period of time before it can be completed or before it can be used, before it can be sold. However, it is not under the scope or it does not qualify as a qualifying asset under the scope of IAS 23. Okay? So, ibig sabihin, kahit qualifying asset siya by definition, hindi siya qualifying asset by the concept of IAS 23. So, meaning, hindi pwedeng i-capitalize dito sa ating maturing whiskey or other similar inventories yung borrowing cost relating to the production of this product. Okay? So, yun yung consideration natin dyan. Okay, with that, we are now going to proceed with the accounting treatment. Sorry. So, accounting treatment, start tayo with the recognition. So, borrowing costs that are directly attributable to the acquisition, construction, or production of a qualifying asset form part of the cost of the asset and therefore should be capitalized. Okay, very simple. Other borrowing costs are recognized as expense. So, for as long as the borrowing cost is in relation to the processes involved here, provided here, and for as long as it is in relation to a qualifying asset under the scope of IAS 23, then you can capitalize the borrowing cost. Okay? Pag hindi pasok yung qualifying asset sa scope ng IAS 23, then hindi talaga pwedeng i-capitalize yung borrowing cost, meaning it's going to be expense. For the measurement of your borrowing cost, you need to determine kung ano ang method or ano yung intention ng pag-borrow. Yung borrowings ba natin, is it for the specific acquisition or is it specifically attributable to the qualifying asset or is it part of the general borrowings na kung saan nagamit natin yung portion ng general borrowings para doon sa ating qualifying asset. So, yun yung mga consideration natin. So, where funds are borrowed specifically, the cost eligible for capitalization will be the actual cost incurred less any income earned on the temporary investment of such borrowing. So, madali lang siya. Kunin mo lang yung actual interest, bawas mo yung investment income or yung income na na-earn from the investment of the unused portion ng borrowing. So, madali lang siya. Where the funds are from a general pool naman, okay, so ibig sabihin yan ay galing sa general borrowings. The eligible amount is determined by applying a capitalization rate to the expenditure on that asset. Okay, so ibig sabihin, you are going to consider yung bali dalawa yung lalabas dyan, yung capitalization rate. So, kailangan mo i-compute yan. Tapos, it will be applied doon sa weighted average of the borrowing cost or weighted average doon sa expenditures. So basically yun yung mga consideration natin dyan. So kapag general borrowings, ang una mong gagawin, hanapin mo muna yung capitalization rate, tapos next hanapin mo yung weighted average expenditures. Okay? So the capitalization should commence when the expenditures are being incurred, borrowing costs are being incurred, and activities that are necessary to prepare the asset for its intended use or sale are in progress. Okay? So kailangan natin tong i-emphasize, ha? Okay? So, lagyan na lang natin siya ng emphasis. Number 1, okay. Number 2, uy, ba't siya nag-ano? Ay, number 2 na pala, automatic. Okay, and then, and, yan. Lagyan na lang natin ng emphasis doon sa next portion. Usin lang natin yan. Sige, mamaya na lang. Okay? So, yun yung mga consideration natin. Okay. So, in order for the capitalization of borrowing cost to commence, we need to make sure na nangyayari itong tatlong to. Okay? Kasi kapag hindi nangyayari yung tatlong yan, then hindi pwedeng matuloy. Kaya take note, end yun end. So, dapat yung tatlo meron. Hindi pwedeng isa lang. Dapat lahat. So, dapat gumagastos. Pangalawa, dapat may utang na talaga na na-incur. Tapos pangatlo, dapat may activities na nangyayari. Ibig sabihin, may actual na progress na nangyayari doon sa ating qualifying asset. Okay? May nakalagay dito sa parenthesis, nakalagay, may include some activities prior to commencement of physical production. Okay? So, ano yung ibig sabihin yan? Okay? Kasi meron tayong tinatawag na dito, may tinatawag kasi tayo na temporary delay at saka permanent delay. Okay? So, ibig sabihin, it is possible na may activities na nangyayari pero hindi siya physical activity. Okay? Like example, di ba yung usual na example dyan is yung whenever you are constructing a facility tapos gumagamit ka ng concrete, pagka-apply mo ng concrete, okay, or kapag na-lay mo na yung concrete, hindi naman pwedeng ituloy mo dire-diretso yung pagtatrabaho. Kasi you need to make sure na mag-cure muna or magdadry ng husto yung concrete prior to commencing your activities. So, ibig sabihin, yung curing process ng semento wherein walang actual physical production or walang physical activity na nangyayari, it is still considered as an activity necessary to prepare the asset for its intended use or sale. So, meaning, kahit ganun yung nangyayari na may temporary delays tayo, okay, that is still considered as an activity. So, tuloy-tuloy pa rin natin yung capitalization ng ating borrowing cost. Okay? Pero, kapag yung delay is considered as permanent delay na, ibig sabihin, hindi naman na talaga siya yung usual na delay. Hindi na siya yung expected na delay. Kumbaga, parang example, ayaw nang magtrabaho ng mga empleyado, may strike nang nangyayari, may mga ganon. So, in that case, that is a permanent delay. So, hindi na siya pasok sa number 3. Hindi na siya pwedeng makonsider as a necessary activity to prepare the asset for its intended use or sale. So, ang mangyayari, magsa-stop tayo ng capitalization. Ayun, no? Capitalization should be suspended during periods in which active development is interrupted. Okay? Capitalization should cease naman when substantially all of the activities necessary to prepare the assets for its intended use or sale are complete. Okay? If only minor modifications are outstanding, this indicates that substantially all of the activities are complete. Okay? So, kasi kailangan nating i-consider kung itutuloy pa ba natin yung pagka-capitalize or hindi na. Okay? So, may mga key terms tayo, suspended, tapos yung cease or yung cessation ng ating capitalization. So, suspended siya kapag permanent delay, magsicease siya kapag ready na yung asset, and minor modifications, okay, does not mean na tuloy pa rin ang ating pagka-capitalize. Kasi, minor modifications already means na ready na yung asset. May kunti ka na lang na aayusin. The question there is, how do you determine if the modification is minor or a major modification? Diba? Kasi yan yung issue natin. Again, go back to the concept that the IFRSs are principles-based and not rules-based. Which means that later on in actual practice, you need to identify kung yung modification ba ay minor or major. Okay? So, professional judgment ang gagamitin mo dyan. Okay? So, ibig sabihin, kung based on your judgment siya ay major modification, edi tuloy mo pa rin yung pagka-capitalize ng borrowing cost. But if you consider that the modification is deemed minor only, then stop mo na yung capitalization. So, principle kasi ang sinusundan natin. So, for me, this is basically going to be your guide, okay? Kung pwede mo pa rin namang gamitin or magagamit mo yung asset without major hassle or without major interruptions, ganyan, tapos may konti ka lang nagagawin. Okay, like example, sabihin natin, ready na yung asset, may pinapapalit ka lang na kulay ng pintura, ganyan. Kasi ayaw mo pala yung kulay nun. So, papalitan mo lang yung kulay ng pintura, minor modification lang siya. In other words, practically, ready naman na talaga yung asset, may babaguhin ka lang na aesthetics, okay? Or yung portion lang na for the asset to become more pleasing to the site siguro, ganyan. So, okay lang. Okay, so yun yung consideration mo dyan. So, but again, that's going to be based on your judgment later on kapag may na-encounter kang ganito sa actual practice. Okay? Yan. Next, other consideration, where construction is completed in stages, which can be used while construction of the other parts continues, capitalization of attributable borrowing cost should cease when substantially all of the activities necessary to prepare that part for its intended use or sale are complete. So, ano naman ibig sabihin ito? Ito yung ma-identify mo kung kompleto na yung isang portion or yung isang aspect ng pagpe-prepare ng asset. So, in that case daw, since malalaman mo kung ano yung milestones relating to the production of that asset, so, pag kunyari, meron kang na-incur na borrowing cost for this particular stage, at alam mo na tapos na tong stage na to, then yung borrowing cost relating to that stage, hindi mo na ika-capitalize kasi tatapos na. So, ganun lang naman yung ibig sabihin natin dyan. Okay, finally, for the disclosures, before we go to the practical application, for the disclosure requirements, ang una mo lang gagawin is i-disclose yung amount of borrowing cost capitalized during the period and to provide the capitalization rate used in your general borrowings. So, ibig sabihin yung mga basic computation lang na related doon sa ating borrowings. Okay? So, we now go to our practical application. Ito na yung mga basic na formula or guidelines natin. So, we already know na ang borrowing cost natin ay interest sa isang pautang. So, meaning kailangan liability component yung pinanggalingan. Hindi siya pwedeng manggaling sa equity component. Okay? So, next, the treatment of your borrowing cost will generally be expense kapag hindi naman siya relating to qualifying asset, tapos capitalize siya kapag qualifying asset yung paggagamitan ng borrowing. Okay? Alam na natin na ang qualifying asset ay yung item na medyo matagal, meaning 1 year siguro minimum or beyond, in order for it to be ready for use. Okay? The criteria for capitalization as provided already, yung sinabi natin kanina, so dapat may nagagastos, dapat may borrowing na nai-incur, tapos may activities na nangyayari. Okay? So, to emphasize lang, ano ba yung ibig sabihin ng may nagagastos or may cost na nai-incur? Ang definition niyan, pag sinabi nating cost, ito yung mga considered na cost. Okay? Una, kapag nagbayad ka ng cash. Pangalawa, kapag may na-exchange na asset. Okay? So, considered pa rin yan as cost. Or pangatlo, pag nag-incur ka ng interest-bearing liability. Emphasize natin itong letter C ha. Itong letter C na to kasi ito yung medyo trivial dyan. Ang concept kasi ganito, hindi mo masasabi na gumastos ka na, okay, kung hindi ka nag-incur ng interest on a particular liability. So, example ganito, bumili ako ng material on account. Ibig sabihin, accounts payable yon. Tapos, binayaran ko siya after 1 month. Okay? Ang tanong, kailan ko i-consider as nag-incur nga ako ng cost? Is it nung umutang ako on account or nung nagbayad na ako? Ang sagot ay kapag nagbayad ka na. Kasi yung accounts payable is a non-interest bearing liability kasi open account yon. So, kapag ikaw ay nag-transact naman tapos yung exchange, yung kapalit nun ay interest bearing liability, example, note payable siguro, ganyan, or loans payable, then considered na siya as an actual cost incurred. Okay? Bakit importante na malaman mo tong ABNC na to? Kasi later on in your computation, it will also affect kung magko-compute ka na ng weighted average expenditure. Okay? Kasi baka magkamali ka, kinonsider mo na siya as expenditure ng January, dapat pala February ang start na bilang niya. Kasi non-interest bearing liability pala. Okay? So anyway, may example tayo dyan sa baba later on. Okay? So ito yung mga in-explain natin kanina, ito lang yung emphasis natin. Yung mga klase ng costs incurred. Okay? So we go to the borrowing cost computation. So alam na natin yung borrowing cost computation natin. Yung basic lang, basta kapag specific, kunin mo lang interest expense, ibawas mo yung interest income. Kapag general borrowings, kunin mo yung weighted average expenditures, multiply mo yung capitalization rate, wherein the capitalization rate is computed as the average interest, okay, or average interest rate of all general borrowings. Pag sinabi nating average, this is supposed to be weighted, okay? Weighted average, okay, interest rate of all general borrowings. Kasi baka ang gawin mo, kunin mo lang lahat ng interest rate divided by the number of loans. Hindi ganon. I-consider mo yung amount ng loan na inutang natin. Okay? Tapos, kapag mix naman, ibig sabihin may specific borrowing ka tapos may general borrowings ka, ang gagawin mo, mag-start ka pa rin sa weighted average expenditure, ibawas mo yung borrowing that is related to the specific project, okay? Tapos yung maiiwan dito, yun yung i-multiply mo ng capitalization rate. Okay? So basically, yun yung consideration natin dito. So that is the summary of the concepts relating to borrowing cost. Okay? So we now proceed to the theory questions. So the theory questions relating to borrowing cost, isa-isahin natin yung mga items. So question number 1 muna. Borrowing cost can be capitalized. O obvious na to. Hindi naman pwedeng always kasi para lang yan sa qualifying asset. So that's going to be sometimes lang. Okay? Yan. Pangalawa, interest on bank overdraft, short-term and long-term borrowings are the only items included in borrowing cost. Of course, alam mo na yan, the answer is false. Bakit siya false? Kasi, di ba, pwedeng kasama dyan yung mga other types of borrowings like sa finance lease, and it also considers all exchange rate differences relating to your foreign borrowings. So the answer there is false kasi madaming pwedeng panggalingan ang ating borrowing cost. Okay, so proceed tayo. So number 3, a qualifying asset includes. Okay, so based on the choices, alam na natin no, na ang sagot ay letter C. Kasi yung inventories converted for sale in a short time or short period, di ibig sabihin hindi siya pwedeng qualifying asset. Okay? Assets ready for sale or used when acquired, so ibig sabihin pagka-acquire mo pwede agad ibenta, so hindi siya qualifying asset. So based din mismo dun sa text na diniscuss natin, yung maturing whiskey is considered as a qualifying asset. However, reiterate ulit natin, qualifying asset siya by definition, pero hindi siya qualifying asset in the scope of IAS 23. So, ibig sabihin, kahit qualifying asset siya dyan, hindi siya pwedeng mag-capitalize ng borrowing cost kasi specific na sinabi na ng ating standard or ng IAS 23 na hindi capitalizable ang borrowing cost for these types of assets. Okay? 4. Renting out an upgraded office building that you have purchased is an example of an investment property. This is an example of an asset that does not qualify, or meaning that is not covered as a qualifying asset under IAS 23. The answer is false, of course. Okay, di ba na-emphasize na natin ano yung mga pwedeng maging qualifying asset? PPE, intangible asset, investment property, or other inventories that are job order. Okay, so pwede yun. 5. Borrowing cost should be recognized as an expense and written off in the period they are incurred only if the asset qualifies, only or when using pooled funds. Letter C, if the borrowing costs relate to current fast-moving inventory. So, ang sagot ay letter C kasi i-expense natin ang borrowing cost kung hindi qualifying asset. So, letter C lang naman ang hindi qualifying asset dyan. Okay? 6. The basis for treating borrowing cost should be cash basis, accrual basis, mix or of 1 and 2. Of course, accrual basis pa rin tayo. Okay? As for, kasi based on financial accounting and based on PAS 1, you're supposed to use accrual accounting in order for us to satisfy the requirements of the IFRSs. So, accrual basis tayo lagi, letter B. 7. Borrowings can only be capitalized when it is likely that they will generate future economic benefits. Of course, true na yan. Okay? Kaya nga there is a possibility na kahit bago pa yung asset, after mong i-capitalize lahat ng cost, pag kinompute mo yung NRV niya or yung recoverable amount niya, there is a possibility na magkaroon ka ng loss on initial recognition. Kapag sumobra yung na-capitalize na cost in comparison with the benefit na makukuha mo. Okay, so yun yung mga consideration natin dyan. Okay, so anyway, yun tayo. So we go to the next. Number 8, other borrowing cost, those which cannot be capitalized should be recognized as an expense and written off in the period of incurrence. Tama lang yan, true. Number 9, investment income generated from loans taken in order to finance a qualifying asset should be letter A, deducted from borrowing cost. Okay, relating particularly yan dun sa specific borrowings natin. Okay. Number 10, the amount of borrowing cost capitalized will always exceed the cost or the total borrowing cost incurred in that period. Okay? The amount of borrowing cost capitalized will always exceed the total borrowing cost incurred during that period. The answer is false. Okay? Ano ang kwento niyan? Ang kwento kasi niyan ganito. Okay? If you have an actual borrowing, syempre, 'di ba, kukumputin mo lahat ng interest cost nun. Okay? Tapos, meron din yung capitalizable borrowing cost based on the computation na gagawin mo doon sa computations na pinresent natin earlier. So, ang concept niyan, hindi pwede na yung capitalizable borrowing cost is lalampas doon sa actual total borrowing cost incurred during the period. Okay? So, ibig sabihin, the lower dapat, hindi the higher of the two. Okay? Kaya mali ang number 10 kasi ang gusto niya, ika-capitalize mo daw yung higher, okay, than the total borrowing cost incurred. So always ang limit lang natin hanggang doon lang sa actual total borrowing cost incurred. Okay, so hanggang dyan lang. 11. The general pool of funds used to complement borrowings for a qualifying asset may relate just to the subsidiary. If this is the case, when using the weighted average cost relating just to the if this is the case, then use the weighted average cost relating just to the borrowings of the subsidiary. Okay, tama lang. Okay, so true ang sagot dyan kasi hindi mo naman pwedeng idamay yung parent or yung other related parties na hindi naman talaga related doon sa doon sa qualifying asset na kine-create mo kung separate FS ang pinag-uusapan. Okay, so yun siya. 12. The recoverable amount of an asset is defined as, okay, the asset's resale value, its value to the firm as it is stored away in the warehouse, its value to the firm for internal use. Okay, the answer here is letter E. Okay, yung letter A, yung asset's resale value, that's actually the fair value less cost to sell. Yung letter C is value from to the firm for internal use is value in use. Okay, tapos yung letter B, walang ganyan. Okay? It's value to the firm as it is stored away in the warehouse. Parang historical cost siya generally kung pinag-uusapan natin. So, the recoverable amount is letter E. Either A or C. Didiscuss natin further yan kapag nasa impairment na tayo. Ang tanong ngayon, bakit nasa borrowing cost pa lang tayo? Bakit tinatanong na yung recoverable amount? Diba kasi nga diniscuss natin kanina, kapag kinapitalize natin ang borrowing cost, at the inception of at the start of the asset's life, pwede mong i-consider agad yung recoverable amount para malaman mo kung mag-record ka ba ng loss at the initial recognition of the asset. Okay, so in that case kasi baka sobra na yung na-capitalize na cost as compared doon sa recoverable amount niya. Okay. 13. When capitalizing borrowing cost, there is a risk that the total or that the cost of an asset may be inflated above its recoverable amount. Any excess of borrowing cost above the recoverable amount should be written off. Letter B. Ayan, so naulit yung kwento na sinabi natin kanina. So in this case, pag sobra na yung na-capitalize, hindi na rin magbe-benefit yan, edi expense mo na lang yung borrowing cost. Okay. Ang alternative treatment sa number 13, capitalize mo lang muna lahat, tapos pag binangga mo na yung total capitalized cost doon sa recoverable amount, yung difference treat mo as a loss. So ganun siya. So yun yung isang treatment pa. Basta ang concept lang nun, huwag kang magka-capitalize in excess of the recoverable amount. 14, capitalization is only started when, so ano ulit yung na-discuss natin, dapat may gastos, pangalawa dapat may utang, tapos pangatlo dapat may activities na nangyayari. So the answer there is letter E, A, B, and C. Okay? 15, the total cost of a qualifying asset is increased by any progress payments received or any government grants. Okay, the answer is false. Okay? Similar to our discussion in government grants, kapag nakatanggap ka ng payment on behalf, okay, or in relation to lessening your cost doon sa qualifying asset, yan ay hindi dinadagdag, yan ay binabawas. Okay, false tayo dyan sa number 15. 16, capitalization is also allowed on assets being held with no present activity for future development. So false siya kasi wala kang activity, di ba? No present activity. So hindi pwedeng magkaroon ng capitalization. Okay? So letter B ang sagot, false. Number 17, capitalization is suspended if delays in the development of an asset are permanent. Letter B. Na-discuss na natin kanina, kapag temporary siya, okay lang. Okay? Temporary. Kasi kailangan yung delay na yon para sa progression mo later on dun sa pagpaproduce or pagpe-prepare mo ng asset. Pero pag permanent, hindi na. So, letter B ang sagot natin sa 17. 18. Capitalization is suspended if active development of an asset is suspended for an extended period of time. So, that is true. Permanent delays ang tawag dyan. 19. When the borrowing or when the building of a qualifying asset is being completed in many parts and each part can be used independently of other parts which are still being built, then the answer is letter B, capitalization should be applied for each part separately. So yung diniscuss natin kanina na isa-stop mo na yung capitalization nung natapos na portion tapos itutuloy mo siya dun sa mga hindi pa tapos na portion. So letter B ang sagot natin dyan. So yun na yung answers natin sa mga theory questions. So let us proceed to the borrowing cost problem portion. Okay, these are the problem samples natin for us to apply the concepts relating to borrowing cost. So let's start with number 1. So number 1, you are building a bridge costing 200 million. 120 million is financed from long-term loan costing 8%. The remaining 80 million comes from a pool of loans. 35% of the pooled loans cost 10%, 65% cost 12%. Using this information, okay, find the cost of borrowings for the first year, the average borrowing rate of the project, and the weighted average of the pool of loans. Okay? So generally, ano muna ang gagawin natin dyan? So basically, ang nangyari kasi dito, assume natin natapos yung building or yung bridge within the year. Okay? Wala namang kasing binigay kung kailan siya natapos. Okay? So what we are going to do is to get first the average expenditure, which is 200 million. And then we are going to determine kung magkano yung sa specific at saka yung general. So out of the 200 million, sinabi 120 is the specific. So obviously, the general borrowing is 80 million. Okay? Yung specific borrowing, ang gagawin mo lang doon is you're going to get 8%. Okay? Tapos yun na mismo yung ating borrowing cost na attributable doon sa specific borrowing. Kasi wala namang binigay na interest or investment income doon sa unused portion. Okay? Yung general borrowings naman natin, okay, na 80 million, i-multiply natin siya doon sa 11.3%. Okay? Ang tanong, saan mo nakuha yung 11.3%? Okay? So, we'll bring out our calculator. So, kukunin kasi natin yung weighted average nung ating pool of loans. Sinabi kasi 35% has a 10% cost, tapos 65% has a 12% cost. Okay? So, given na yon, mas madali na siya. So, 0.35 times 0.1, di ba? So, that is 3.5%. Tapos, yung 65%, 12%. Okay? So, 0.65 times 0.12, so 0.78. So, pag inad mo yung 0.78 na to, at saka yung kanina na 0.035, so plus 0.035, so that's 11.3%. Kaya yun yung ating capitalization rate. Yun yung gagamitin nating pang-multiply doon sa general borrowing. Okay? So, yun siya. So, from there, paano mo naman makukuha yung 9.32% na average of the pool of loans? Ang gagawin mo lang, kunin mo tong interest na to, i-divide mo lang siya doon sa total borrowings natin na 200 million. Or basically, kung kakalkyo natin yun, so kunin mo lang yung 18,640,000, divide natin siya ng 200 million. Yun. So 9.32%. Okay? So yun lang yun. So yung mga answer natin, capitalization rate will be 11.3%. Total interest on the pool of the pooled loans is 9,040,000. Pag sinabing pooled loans, yung yung 80 million. Tapos yung total principal natin doon is 80 million. Kaya yun yung makukuha nating capitalization rate. Okay? We go to question number 2. The recoverable amount of a machine may be defined as its value to the firm for internal use or its resale value. So, kakuan lang natin to. So, the recoverable amount of the machine is equal to 120,000. It is a qualifying asset. Its average carrying cost for the period is 114,000. 20,000 of the borrowing cost for this period relate to this machine. Okay? What then is the amount to be capitalized and how much must be written off? So, ang gagawin lang natin computation, yung basic lang muna. Kung ang total na carrying amount is 114 plus nag-incur ka pa ng 20,000 na borrowing cost, ang total na total na capitalizable cost will be ito. Pero looking at the information, 120 lang daw ang recoverable amount niya. So in that case, if the recoverable amount is only 120, which is the only amount or the amount that can only be maintained in the capitalization of the asset, then the remaining will be written off. Yun na yung 14,000. Okay, therefore, ang summary natin dyan, we will only capitalize 6,000 of the borrowing cost out of the total 20,000 and the 14,000 will be expensed. Okay, so ganun lang yung gagawin natin dyan. Let's go to number 3. So question number 3 is an example of a specific borrowing. So Vin Diesel Company borrowed 16 million to finance the construction of its building by July 1, 20X1. The loan shall be repaid commencing the month following completion of the building. Expenditures for the partially completed structure totaled 9,600,000 during the year end June 30, 20X2. Assuming that these expenditures were incurred evenly throughout the year, the Diesel Company earned interest of 320,000 for the year on the unexpended portion of the loan, and the annual interest rate is 3%. What amount of interest shall be capitalized to the building? So, madali lang to kasi specific borrowing siya. So, for you to get the capitalizable cost, ang kailangan mo lang gawin is kunin mo yung interest expense, tapos ibawas mo yung investment income or yung income earned from the unused portion ng ating loan. So, ang gagawin mo lang doon, kunin mo yung 480. Paano mo nakuha yung 480? Diba? Ang inutang mo ay 16 million. Okay? Take note, specific borrowing siya, so hindi ka kukuha ng weighted average expenditure. Ang kukunin mo yung mismong utang. So 16 million yung mismong borrowing natin, multiply natin ng 3%, so that's 480. Okay? Pagkatapos, ang na-earn mo daw dun sa hindi pa nagagamit na portion is 320. So, bawasan mo siya ng 320. So, that's 160. Okay? So, 160 sagot mo sa number 3. Number 4, Bilbao Baggins Company started construction on a building on January 1 of the current year and completed construction on December 31 of the same year. The company had only 2 interest-bearing notes outstanding during the year, and both of these notes were outstanding for all 12 months of the year. The following information is available. So, yan yung mga items. Average accumulated expenditure, or yan yung WAEX na tinatawag natin. Okay? So, that's 2,500,000. Ending balance of the construction in progress before capitalization of interest, 3,600,000. Tapos yung mga utang, we have 6% note incurred specifically for the project, so specific borrowing yan. Tapos meron tayong 5 million naman na for the 9%, 5 million na 9% long-term note para naman dun sa general. Okay? So, to make the computation, what we are going to do is to get the weighted average expenditure, tapos i-multiply natin yan doon sa capitalization rate for the general. Okay? Pero since ito kasi ay mixed, pinaghalo nating specific at saka yung general, so ang una mong gagawin, di ba, given na yung 2,500,000, so yun muna yung weighted average expenditure. Ang gagawin mo, tanggalin mo yung galing sa specific borrowing na 1,500,000, tapos ang maiiwan, yun yung manggagaling dito sa general loan na at na 5 million. So meaning, from there, kung ang specific ay 1,500,000, you simply multiply it by 6%. Okay, yun na yung ating interest for the specific borrowing. Wala kasing binigay na earnings. So kung walang binigay na earnings, edi wala tayong ibabawas dito. So 90 na yon. Yung naiiwan na 1 million, multiply natin doon sa interest rate ng general borrowing na 9%, ang lalabas 90,000. Nagkataon lang, parehas. So, pag tinotal mo siya, 180. Okay? So, yun lang. Ganyan lang ang gagawin natin. Question number 5. On January 1, 20X1, AAA company borrowed 20 million to finance the construction of a new building. Interest is payable on the loan at 8%. Stage payments were due throughout the construction period, and therefore excess funds were invested during the period. By the end of the project on December 31, 20X1, investment income of 600 has been earned. How much is the capitalizable borrowing cost? So again, this is a loan relating to or attributable specifically doon sa kino-construct na qualifying asset. So gagawin mo lang, kunin mo yung interest expense, ibawas natin yung interest income sa unexpended portion. So kung ang inutang mo ay 20 million, multiply mo ng 8%, that's 1,600,000. Ibawas mo yung 600 na investment income, so lalabas 1 million. So ang borrowing cost lang natin na i-capitalize natin for number 5 is 1 million. Okay, so yun yan. 6. Itong number 6 naman, puro general siya. Okay? So, sinabi, on January 1, 20X1, BBB Company had the following borrowings made for general purposes and a part of the proceeds was used to finance the construction. So, 3 loan yung panggagalingan ng ating pondo para sa construction. The construction of the qualifying asset was started on immediately and expenditures incurred on the qualifying asset were as follows. So, ito yung mga nagastos. Okay? Ang tinatanong, how much is the capitalizable borrowing cost? Okay. So, ano ulit yung discuss natin kanina? For general borrowings, ang una mong gagawin, hanapin mo ang weighted average expenditure. Tapos, ang next mong gagawin, hanapin mo yung capitalization rate. Tapos, pag-multiplyin mo yung dalawang yon. So, unahin na muna natin si weighted average expenditure. So, saan nakuha itong mga to? Yan yung mga nagastos throughout the year. Okay? Saan naman nakuha itong mga ratio na to? Yung 12/12, 9/12, 5/12, 3/12, 0/12. Yan ay based doon sa kung kailan siya nagastos. Okay? So, example, Itong 9,200,000 na to, kailan siya nagastos? Noong January, di ba? So kung January 1 siya nagastos, ibig sabihin, all throughout the year, ay outstanding na siya na gastos. Kaya ang ratio niya, 12/12. Or 12 months out of the total 12 months. Gawin mo din siya sa ibang expenditure, yung 8.8, 14 million, 21.6 at saka yung 1.2, bilangin mo lang kung ilang buwan. Like example ito, March 31. So kung March 31 siya, April ka mag-start magbilang. April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, December. So 9 months yon, kaya 9/12. Yung nagastos mo nung July 30, syempre hindi mo nabibilangin yung July, August ka na magsa-start, August, September, October, November, December. So 5 months. Yung nagastos mo ng October, ganun din. October 1 kasi yan, so kasama yung October. So October, November, December. 3/12. Yung nagastos mo ng December 31, 31 na yon, so walang ma-attribute doon sa current year. Kasi very late yung paggastos mo, year-end na talaga yun, so 0/12. So after mo i-compute lahat yan, ang lalabas na total is ito. You can verify it by using your calculator. What's the next step? The next step is to compute the capitalization rate. So babalikan mo itong mga utang na to. Ano ulit gagawin mo? Computein mo lahat ng interest ng mga to. So that's 12% ng 40 million, 14% ng 72 million, tapos 16% ng 88 million. Tapos pag na-add mo na yung tatlong yon, i-divide mo doon sa total nitong principal na to. So paano natin ginawa? Ito yon. Total interest divided by total principal. So pag tinotal natin lahat ng interest ng tatlong yon, ito yung lalabas. Okay? Tapos pag tinotal natin lahat ng ito, yung 40, 72 at saka 88 million, ang lalabas ay 200,000. So ang ating capitalization rate is 14.48%. Okay? So meron ka ng weighted average expenditure, meron ka ng capitalization rate, compute mo na lang, ito times ito, or yun, ang lalabas ay 5,362,427. So that is our capitalizable borrowing cost already. Okay, so yun. Next, we go to number 7. Ano ang kwento ng number 7? On January 1, 20X1, CCC Company had the following borrowings made for general purposes ulit. And part of the proceeds was used to finance the construction of a qualifying asset. So same din lang, given pa rin yung same. Ano nga lang ang pagkakaiba? Ang sinabi dito, construction started January 1 and completed December 30. The total cost of construction was 72 million, which was incurred evenly throughout the year. Okay? So the 72 million was incurred evenly throughout the year, which means that if we are going to get the weighted average expenditure, we are simply going to use simple average. Okay, wala kang mapaggagamitan ng hindi mo siya pwedeng gamitan ng 12/12, yung mga ganon. Kasi evenly throughout the year nga eh. So gagawin mo, diretso mo na lang yung 72 million, divide mo ng 2 para simple average. So 36 million ang weighted average expenditure. Same step, kunin mo pa rin yung capitalization rate. Kung mapapansin mo, itong mga given naman na to, kaparehas lang siya nung question number 6 kanina. So malamang yung lalabas na answer din natin ay parehas lang. So 14.48% din tayo dyan pag kinuha mo yung capitalization rate. So in this case, multiply mo itong 36 million na to at saka yung 14.48%, lalabas na yung ating capitalizable borrowing cost na 5,212,800. So, yun yung sagot natin sa question number 7. Okay. Question number 8. Ano ang kwento ng question number 8? Ang sinabi dito, si DDD Company contracted for the construction of a building for 80 million on a land that it had previously purchased. The building was completed on December 31 or December 20X1. And the following payments were made to the contractor. Okay? So, ano ang nangyari dyan? Okay? So, meron kang kino-construct. Okay? Or nagpa-construct ka, I mean. Okay? Nagpa-construct ka. Okay? May hinire kang contractor. Okay? Tapos ito yung mga nagastos natin. Tapos, meron siyang mga additional details. Sabi, the following represent the borrowings of the DD company as of December 31, 20, X1. So, ito naman yung mga gastos. Okay? How much is the capitalizable borrowing cost? So, looking at the information, alam mo na yan ay pinaghalong specific at general borrowing kasi yung given dito, ito daw, ayan specifically borrowed to finance the construction. Tapos itong dalawa, ito yung general borrowings. So, ano ulit gagawin natin? First step is to get the weighted average of all of these costs. Okay? So, yun yung step natin na ginawa dyan. Kung paano mo gagawin, same dun sa process, bibilangin mo lang yung months kung ilang months outstanding. So, ang lalabas ay 36 million. Next, capitalization rate tayo kasi hindi mo nakukunin yung capitalization rate nito kasi ito ay specific na. So, ito na lang yung hahanapan mo ng capitalization rate. So, sabi doon, 12.5% ng 40 million. So, compute na lang natin. So, that's 40 million times 0.125. So, that's 5 million plus 10% ng 6 million, ay ng 60 million, automatically 6 million na yan. Huwag ka na mag-calculate, kaya mo na yan. Okay, huwag mo nang i-multiply yan. So, diretso dito. So, that's 11 million. I-divide natin siya dun sa total principal which is 100 million. Okay, kasi 40 plus 60 is 100. So, that's going to be 11%. So, ibig sabihin, ang capitalization rate natin sa general borrowings will be 11%. Okay? So, paano natin gagawin yan? Tuloy yung computation. Ang WAEX natin, or weighted average expenditure based on this computation is 36 million. Yung inutang natin specifically for the construction as provided in this information is 28 million. Okay? So, tatanggalin natin siya dito. So, 36 minus 28 na specific borrowing, ang manggagaling sa general borrowings ay 8 million. So, computein na natin. Ang i-multiply natin for the 28 million is yung interest rate na given dito, 10%. So, 28 million times 10%. Pero wag mong kalimutang ibawas daw itong 480. Kasi meron siyang kinita na temporary investment from the specific borrowing na 480. So, ang lalabas ay 2,320,000. Tapos yung sa general borrowings, yung naiiwan na 8 million, i-multiply mo lang ng 11% kasi yun yung capitalization rate na nandito. Ang lalabas ay 880,000. So, total mo yung dalawang yan. Ito yung ating magiging capitalizable borrowing cost. Okay, so yun lang yung item natin dyan. Question number 9. EEE company started construction of a new office building on January 1, 20X1. Funds borrowed specifically for the construction of the building is 8 million, accruing interest at 10% annually. However, a part of the borrowing is used for other business requirements during the year. Investment income earned on the temporary investment of proceeds from the borrowing amounted to 48,000 which was received in cash on September. Expenditures on the building amounted to 7,200,000 which was incurred evenly during the year. And then question is how much is the capitalizable borrowing cost? Okay. So ngayon, ito ang concern mo sa question number 9. Ang question number 9 kasi, umutang ka specifically for the construction of the qualifying asset, pero a small portion was used or a portion was used for general purposes. So ang tawag diyan, specific borrowing used for general purposes. So in that case, kapag ganyan yung mangyayari, it will be treated as if it is a general borrowing, okay? Pero you need to consider na magbabawas tayo ng expenditure, okay, or magbabawas tayo ng weighted average expenditure based on the earnings ng temporary investment kasi kailangan pa rin natin siyang i-consider. So, paano yung computation? Sinabi, 7,200,000 daw yung nagastos pero it was incurred evenly during the year. So, again, simple average, 7,200,000 divided by 2. So, we will get 3,600,000. Next, ibabawas natin yung na-earn. Okay? Kasi sinabi may na-earn daw na 48,000. Pero yung 48,000 na na-earn natin, that was only received September. So, hindi natin pwedeng sabihin na ito ay ibabawas natin automatically. Kasi nga, nagkaroon lang ng benefit yung company nung September lang. So, kung weighted ito, dapat weighted din ito. That's why, yung 48 million, ang i-deduct mo lang dyan will be yung weighted portion niya since natanggap, which is September, October, November, December, or 4 months equivalent lang nung 48,000. So, that's going to be 16,000. So, as a result, yung net weighted average expenditure natin will be 3,584,000. And this will now be yung basis ng i-multiply natin na 10% or yung capitalization rate based on this. Okay? So, ang lalabas, ang ating capitalizable borrowing cost will be 358,400. Okay? So, yan yun. Yan yung sagot natin sa question number 9. So, ulitin ha. Kasi siya, specific borrowing pero ginamit for general purposes. Okay? So, ibig sabihin, iti-treat mo siya as if it is a general borrowing. Okay? Yun nga lang, nagkataon, ang capitalization rate mo na kung magkano na yung binigay kasi isa lang naman talaga yung loan. Yan. Next. Question number 10. Okay? So, FFF company started construction of a qualifying asset for GGG Incorporated on January 1, 20X1. The following were expenditures incurred on the construction. So, may nagastos na January, May, at saka December. Tapos may mga additional na details dito. Also, meron din tayong progress billings. Okay, ito na yung application natin ng problem wherein paano kapag may progress billings at meron tayong mga gastos that was incurred as a result of the progress billings. Okay? So, basahin lang natin in detail. So, yung ating gastos ay ito. Ito yung mga gastos natin. I-weigh natin yan considering na meron pa itong mga ibabawas natin. Okay? So, anong tanong? How much is the capitalizable borrowing cost? So, may mga given naman na yung capitalization rate. So, wala tayong problema. Ang i-compute lang natin dito is yung weighted average expenditure. Okay. So, first step, kunin natin yung weighted average nito. So, ito ay 4 million times 12 over 12, 1,800,000 times, ilan to? Ay wait, hindi. May additional information pa. Okay, sabi kasi, included in the January 1, 20X1 expenditures is cost of materials purchased on account. Okay, purchased on account for 400,000. The account was settled on July 1. So, ibig sabihin, out of the January 1, 20X1, ito, hindi pa talaga siya incurred. Okay, kasi na-incur lang talaga siya noong July 1. Di ba, balikan natin yung diniscuss natin kanina sa taas. You can only recognize an item as cost incurred if there is, number 1, payment of cash, number 2, exchange of other asset, or number 3, incurrence of interest-bearing liability. Ito kasi on account, so hindi siya interest-bearing. So, itong 400 sa July pa natin dyan i-consider. Next bullet point, included on the or in the May 1, May 1 20X1 expenditure is 40,000 cost of materials obtained in exchange for old equipment. Pasok ba siya sa cost incurred? Yes. Kasi nandun siya sa second, yung exchange of other asset. Okay? So, pasok na yan. Wala na tayong gagawin sa May 1. Okay? So, solution, ganito gagawin mo. Out of the total 4 million nung January, yung 3.6, yun lang ang 12 over 12. Yung 400, since July mo siya binili, edi 6 over 12. Okay, kasi sinabi, nung July mo siya binayaran, ayun, no, July 1. So, kung July 1 mo siya binayaran, July 1 din ang start ng bilang. Kaya 6 months lang. Yung 1.8, automatic na yan, 8 over 12, kasi wala naman tayong problema dito sa May 1 na transaction. Tapos yung December 1 month lang. Kaya yun, 1 over 12. So, pag tinotal natin siya, ito yung total na weighted average expenditure. Pero, di ba? Ulitin natin, meron kasi tayong progress billings. Okay? So kung may progress billings ka, meron kang portion na na-incur na hindi naman talaga galing sa sarili mong gastos. Kasi nanggaling yan sa bayad nung customer mo. So hindi mo yan talaga expenditure. So kailangan natin siyang i-weigh also. So itong April 1 na billing amounting to 800,000 was only received nung June, okay, with a 10% withholding. So ibig sabihin, binil natin yung customer ng 800,000 nung April, nakolekta lang natin siya nung June, at hindi pa mismong 800 yung nakolekta mo. Ang nakolekta mo lang ay 90% niyan. Kaya ang lalabas ito 720, or basically 90% nung 800,000 times kailan mo na receive, June, di ba? So June, July, August, September, October, November, December, 7 months. Kaya yun yung ibabawas mo. Yung 7 months nitong collection na to. Tapos yung next is yung collection mo na 2,400,000. Okay, so to reiterate, yung ating progress billings will be a deduction to our weighted average expenditure kasi hindi talaga sila expenditure kasi nanggaling siya sa pondo ng ibang, or nanggaling siya dun sa pondo ng ating customer na pinagko-constructan or na nagpapa-construct sa atin ng asset. So gagawin mo doon, yung April 1 na binil mo at 800,000 na na-receive mo noong June 1, after removing the 10% withholding, that's only 720. So 720 times 7/12. Tapos yung September naman, na billing na 2,400,000 na November 1, 20x1 mo na-receive, so 2 months lang siya nagamit. Okay? Tapos may withholding pang 10%, so kapag lalabas natin yung calculator, 2,400,000 times 90% kasi may withholding nga na 10%, tapos times 2/12 lang. So 360. Okay? So basically yun yung tatanggalin natin. Okay? So dun sa dito. Kaya ang lalabas dyan, pag binawas mo tong yung lalabas na answer dito, ito yung may iwan. 4,460. Okay, so 5,240. Tapos tanggalin mo yung dalawang to, 4,460 lalabas. Multiply mo ng capitalization rate na 10%, ang lalabas ay 446,000 na capitalizable borrowing cost. Okay, so yun yung answer natin dito. So the capitalizable borrowing cost will only be 446,000. Okay, so yan yung item natin dyan. Ayos. Next. So we go now to our comprehensive example. Ito na yung mga klase ng borrowing cost na lalampas siya ng 1 year. So ibig sabihin mag-accumulate tayo ng borrowing cost. Okay? Mag-accumulate tayo ng borrowing cost for ang tawag dito, for the entire period na tuloy-tuloy pa yung construction hanggang matapos. Okay? So for this problem, we have 4 questions. So Triple H Company, nag-construct siya ng qualifying asset. Tapos ito yung mga nagastos. Nagastos ng 20x1, nagastos ng 20x2, nagastos ng 20x3. So of course, may idea na kayo kung paano kino-compute yung weighted average expenditure niyan. Pero may catch itong problem na to, may trick yan, kasi baka ang gawin mo, laging weighted average expenditure siya na based on the month outstanding. Okay? Kaya papakita natin yung computation. Binigay naman na to yung capitalization rate na 10%, so wala na tayong kailangang problemahin. Ang gagawin na lang natin, computein yung weighted average expenditure, i-multiply doon sa general borrowing. Okay? Or doon sa capitalization rate, I mean. Okay. Tapos take note yung 20x3 natin, nag-end na siya ng September. Okay. So first muna, so ito yung mga tanong, magkano capitalization or capitalizable borrowing cost ng 20x1, 20x2, 20x3, and the total cost of the constructed asset. Okay, so mag-start tayo ng 20x1. I-take note natin na ito yung mga nagastos natin. Okay. So for 20x1, what you're going to do is to simply get the expenditures and multiply it by their respective weights. Okay? So yung 4 million, 12 over 12, nagastos natin yan nung January. Tapos yung 1,800,000 times 8 over 12, so bilangin mo lang yung months. Tapos yung 2,880 multiply mo ng 1 over 12. So ito yung lalabas na WAEX or weighted average expenditures. Multiply natin ng 10%, you will get 544,000. So ito na yung ating borrowing cost. Okay, so yan na yung isasama natin sa cost incurred. Okay. Next, pagdating natin ng 20x2, magko-compute ulit tayo ng weighted average expenditure. Pero take note, dahil ito ay second year na, you need to consider na meron tayong previous cost nung last period na i-carry natin sa 20x2 kasi kasama siya sa weighted average expenditure. Nagastos mo nga rin, di ba? Okay? So, anong gagawin mo doon? Saan natin nakuha itong 9,224,000? Ang gagawin mo, kunin mo lahat ng nagastos mo. Hindi na siya based on 12 over 12, 8 over 12 kasi as of 20x2, yung mga nagastos mo ng 20x1 is already at their actual amount na. Kasi assume na it is outstanding for the entire 20x2 na. Kaya ang gagawin mo, 4 million plus 1,800,000 plus 2,880,000 plus 544,000. Okay? Yun yung borrowing cost. Okay. Parang mali yung total ko. Mali nga. 4 million plus 1,800,000 plus 2,880 plus 544. Yun. Okay? So, 9,224,000. Total mo na, multiply mo na agad ng 12 over 12. Okay? So, yun na yung ating weighted average ng 20x1 expenditure. Take note kasama ka pa rin kasi siya sa accumulated na weighted average expenditures. Tapos yung nagastos natin ng January 1 and August 30 na 3,600,000 at 1,200,000 respectively, i-multiply lang natin siya using the weight na 12 over 12 and 4 over 12. So, total mo lang yon. So, ito total mo lahat yan. Ang lalabas ay 13,224,000. You will get 10% nun. Ito na yung capitalizable borrowing cost for 20x2. Okay? So, yan siya. We go to our last year. Ito na yung year na tawag dito, matatapos yung asset natin na i-construct. Ang gagawin mo ngayon dyan, kunin mo ulit yung mga na-carry from previous year. Okay? So, dito na lang natin kunin kasi mas madaling kunin dito eh. Okay? So, mag-start tayo dito sa 9,224,000. Dagdag mo yung 3,600,000. Dagdag mo yung 1,200,000. At yung, ito, 1,322,400. So, yun. Yung total. Okay? So, ito lahat yung na-carry or lahat ng na-capitalize mo na na-cost during the previous year. Tapos, ang gagawin mo na lang, i-weigh mo na lang itong nagastos mo ng July na 2,400,000. Okay, ang tanong, bakit dito sa 20x3, bakit over 9 lang ang ratio? Bakit hindi over 12? Diba kasi take note, ang sinabi sa ating standard, you should compute for the borrowing cost based on kung hanggang kailan mo lang or hanggang kailan lang natapos yung construction ng asset. Ang nangyari nga, natapos na siya ng September 30. So, kung September 30 ang basis mo, 20x3, then 9 months lang yun. Kaya yung pag-weigh din natin, yung weighted average natin is based on 9 months lang. Okay? So, yun. 15, 9 times 9 over 9. Wala namang kaso kasi carried na yun sa previous year. Kahit 12 over 12 pa yan, same din lang yung amount. Pero itong 2,400,000, outstanding lang siya ng 3 months out of the 9 months na nag-construct tayo during the year. So, pag tinotal mo to, ang lalabas ay ito. Yung 16,146,400 times 10% kasi yun yung capitalization rate. Pero wag mong kakalimutan, times 9/12 din lang ulit. Kasi hindi mo pwedeng i-capitalize yung buong 10% during the year. Kasi ang construction mo hanggang September lang. So 9/12 lang yun. So lalabas na capitalizable borrowing cost mo is ito. 1,210,980. Okay, so yan yung sagot natin sa third question, yung capitalizable borrowing cost for 20x3. Tapos yung last question, magkano yung total cost? Walang problema, i-total lang natin lahat ng nagastos natin. Okay? So ang total na cost natin will be ito. So paano mo na-compute yan? E di diretso, computein mo lahat ng nagastos mo simula nung nag-start kang mag-construct. Itong mga to, or basically ito. Lahat ito. So i-total na lang natin. 4 million plus 1,800,000 plus 2,880,000 plus 3,600,000 plus 1,200,000 plus 2,400,000 plus yung mga borrowing cost. Take note yung wini-weigh natin for purposes lang na makuha natin yung capitalizable borrowing cost. Pero pag tinatanong ka ng total na capitalizable cost, syempre actual cost incurred, di ba? Kaya i-total mo lahat ng actual cost incurred plus yung borrowing cost. So from here, dagdag mo pa yung borrowing cost na 544,000 plus yung ito, yung 1,322,400 plus yung 1,210,980. Oops, anong nangyari sa computation ko? Ano ba yan? Dito ko na nga lang ituloy. Di ba? Nandyan naman na yan eh. Nagkamali yata akong pindot. So, 15,346,400 plus yung 2,400,000 plus yung 1,210,980. So, yun. Total mo lang lahat. Actual cost plus yung borrowing cost. So, ito na yung capitalizable cost natin. Okay? So, ngayon, to make the question comprehensive, what if after mong i-capitalize lahat, you made or you asked for the appraisal of an independent appraiser, tapos sinabi nung appraiser, based on the market value, zonal values, and other valuation techniques na ginamit niya, yung recoverable amount lang nung asset is 18,500,000. So if we're going to do that, minus 18,500,000, then you need to recognize an outright loss na 457,360. Okay? So yan na yung i-recognize mong loss during the year 20x3. Kasi yan yung hindi mo pwedeng i-capitalize na cost kasi sumobra na siya sa recoverable amount ng ating item. Okay? So just in case lang, may ganun na question. Okay? So that is the end of the discussion ng ating borrowing cost. So how are we going to relate the borrowing cost doon sa ating property, plant, and equipment or other assets? Basta always remember, kapag qualifying asset yung ating property, plant, and equipment or yung ating intangible asset or yung ating investment property, i-add mo lang yung capital or i-add mo lang yung na-compute mong borrowing cost. Tapos, later on, after mong i-capitalize lahat, atas binangga mo siya dun sa recoverable amount, kung mas mababa ang recoverable amount niya, yung excess dun sa kinapitalize mo will become or will be recognized as a loss. Okay? So, yun yung treatment natin dyan. Okay? So, yan yung end ng ating discussion ng borrowing cost.